kids. I am teacher Christine Gay and I'll be teaching right now literary genres and their subgenres. So sit back and relax and enjoy watching and listening to this discussion. Make sure you have your ball pen and a piece of paper or your notebook so you can jot down important information that will be discussed in our presentation. Before we go through the genres and subgenres, let's talk about these questions. What is literature? When we talk about literature, we're talking about stories that we've read in books and other writing that usually written by expert authors. And the second one is, what is literary genre? Let's define first genre. Genre is a type or category, while literary is of literature. So, when we define literary genre, it is a type or category of literature. This time, we will be discussing the four main literary genres. We have drama, fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. Let's discuss further drama. Drama is a play for theater told by character dialogue. The characters are the ones talking. The characters are expressing their lines played in a stage. Example for this is Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. The story is all about the love of two individuals. Fiction. Fictions are stories that did not actually happen in real life. They are conceived in the imagination of an author or a writer. Example for this is Star Wars. This is a story or a movie that is set in a future world where alien and human being interact with each other. They have powers, they have magics, they have technologies, and time sleep are present in this story. Nonfiction. Writing that is real and factual or that actually happened. One example for that is the biography of Albert Einstein. The author here talks about the life of Albert Einstein, his contributions, his inventions, and many other achievements. Poetry. Poetry are writing using language and sounds in special ways to express ideas. One example for that is haiku. We have here entitled An Autumn. I hear falling rain. I hear my thoughts falling too. All I want is you. This time, we'll be talking about the subgenres of those main literary genres. When we talk about subgenres, we're talking about smaller group or category. Under drama, we have comedy and tragedy. Under fiction, we have fantasy, folklore, historical, mystery, realistic fiction, romance, science fiction, thriller, or suspense. Under nonfiction, we have biography, autobiography, narrative, periodicals, and reference materials. And under poetry, we have lyric, narrative poetry, and dramatic poetry. Let's discuss further the subgenres of drama. Note, drama is a play for theater told by character dialogue. The first subgenre is comedy. Yes, a comedy is a funny or humorous drama with happy ending. We have two examples. One is Home Alone and the other one is Dennis the Menace. The second subgenre of drama is tragedy. A tragedy is a sad drama with a sad ending. And I gave you an example earlier. That is the story of Romeo and Juliet. This is a sad drama with a sad ending because the two lovers died at the end. And another one is Titanic. One of the main characters died. Let's talk about the subgenre of fiction. First one is fantasy. Fantasy is a story in a fantasy world. Sometimes animals talk and magic are present. Example for that is Harry Potter. The second subgenre of fiction is folklore. Folklore is an old cultural story or stories. It includes legends, fairy tales, fables, myths, tall tales. We have an example here. The turtle and the monkey. Usually, folklore talks about moral lesson. Historical. Historical are fiction stories based on real history. We have an example here, Gladiator. The main character in that story is a Roman general who lost the war and was captured by the enemy. He became a slave. And because of that, he was made into a gladiator. Gladiators are the ones who fight inside an arena. Mystery. Mystery is about a story where its goal is to solve the crime and figure out who committed the crime. Example for that is murder mystery. Realistic fiction, a story that seems real but isn't real. Example for that is Diary of a Wimpy Kid. In this realistic fiction, events are actually somewhat real to people, or it occurs in the lives of people or animals in a believable setting. It resembles real life, but the characters there are fictional characters. However, they react similarly to real people. Romance. Romance are love stories. Example for that is It Must Be Love by the Kathniel. Actors and actresses in the Philippine cinema. Science fiction. Science fiction are stories in the future with advanced technology. We have an example, Star Wars, where aliens and human beings interact, guns that we cannot find in our world today, and as well as their swords. They travel from one galaxy to another galaxy. Thriller or suspense. A story that makes readers nervous or excited. One example for that is A Quiet Place. Let's talk about subgenres here that are confusing. First one is fantasy and science fiction. Bear in mind that when we talk about fantasy, they are things that are impossible to happen. Okay? Just like magics, right? While science fiction, these are stories that are set in a future world that has some similarities with our current world. It involves new inventions or technologies. Another group or another pair of subgenres in fiction that are confusing: mystery and thriller. Bear in mind that when we talk about mystery, they are stories that aims to solve a crime. They are trying to figure out who made the crime, who is the culprit. In the thriller or suspense, the goal of this is to thrill the audience by revealing the secrets as the audience read the book or watch the movie. So those are the subgenres of fiction. This time, let's talk about the subgenres of nonfiction. The first is biography. Biography is a story of a person's life written by an author or a biographer. We have here an example entitled Robin. This is a life story of Robin Williams, a comedian Hollywood actor, and the writer or author of this book is Dave. Next subgenre of nonfiction is autobiography. An autobiography is a story of the author's life written by the author himself or herself. We have here an example. It's a book about Nelson Mandela, and the one who wrote this book is Nelson Mandela himself. Narrative. Narrative is a story or narrative that had happened in real life. It's usually defined as non-fiction that uses techniques and styles of fiction. It has character, it has plot, it has conflict, and it has scene or setting. However, be reminded that everything that is included in this story or narrative happened in real life. Periodicals. Periodicals are written regularly. It's either daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly. Example for this is or are the magazines, newspapers, and journals. The last, the last subgenre of nonfiction is reference material. Reference materials are books with facts in alphabetical order. We have dictionaries, thesaurus, and encyclopedias. They are examples of reference materials. This time, let's talk about the subgenres of poetry. Poetry are writing using language and sounds in a special ways or a special way to express ideas. The first one is lyric. Lyric is a poem about the speaker's thoughts. Example for those are elegy, ode, sonnet, and haiku. We have here an example that I have posted. Lying, listening to small rustles all around, waiting to be found. This talks about the waiting, the mode of waiting of an individual. Next one, narrative poetry. A narrative poetry is a poem that tells a story. Example for that is epic. Epic is a long poem about a hero. Just like the Odyssey and the Iliad. Dramatic poetry. These are words spoken by a character. Example for this are soliloquy, dialogue, monologue. Here we have the lines coming from the story Romeo and Juliet. O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name, or if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet. So those are the literary genres and subgenres. Let's have a review. What is literary genre? A literary genre is a type or category of literature. What are the subgenres of fiction? We have fantasy, folklore, historical, mystery, realistic, fiction, romance, science fiction, and thriller or suspense. What's the difference of fantasy and science fiction? Both are conceived by imaginations. Their difference is fantasy are impossible to happen. Sometimes the characters are animals that talk like human beings, or the characters have magics, while science fiction is a story that's set in the future. It has similarities with our current world, and there's an involvement of new inventions and technologies. Is Romeo and Juliet written by Shakespeare an example of a mystery? Why? No, it is not an example of mystery. Its genre is drama and its subgenre is tragedy. Mystery are stories about crimes where its goal is to solve it and determine who is the culprit, while drama is a play for theater told by the character. In here, in the story of Romeo and Juliet, it is tragic because the main characters, Romeo and Juliet, died at the end. Which among the following is an example of a lyric poetry? A. O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name, or if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love. Or B. Roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweet, and so are you. The answer is B. Congratulations! You already learned the literary genres and subgenres. Announcement. Review the lesson so that you'll be reminded of the things that were discussed in this presentation. Check our Google Classroom and wait for an electronic quiz about literary genres and subgenres. Good luck!